Welcome to an episode of Behind the Scenes, a weekly program unveiling the biggest political developments in Somali politics. I'm Sultan Mohammed, your host and producer here on HORUFADHI Media. On this week's program, Las Anod Summit kicked off in Seoul as elders from the Dulbahante clan meet for the first time in years to discuss the future of Seoul, Sanag and Ain regions as recent tensions resulted in clashes that saw dozens killed. On the other hand, the separatist Somaliland president Musa Bihi has insisted that his forces will not be leaving the region, instead arguing that Somaliland forces will defend the town at all costs, accusing clan elders in the region of terrorism. In response on Tuesday, the Sultan of the Dulbahante clan Garad Jama' Garad Ali has conveyed that the only terrorists in the region are the Somaliland soldiers that are not from the region that continue to stay despite pleas by the elders in the region to withdraw. Now, this is a topic on the program today. We hope you find this program very informative. Please like, share, and for similar content, do subscribe to HORUFADHI Media. Also, do subscribe to HORUFADHI Media Group second channel, known as HORUFADHI TV, where you are currently watching this program and where you can find other exclusive programs such as Mahahe Sela, among others. And last but not least, do follow myself, Sultan Mohammed, Suleiman Hashi, Yasin Abdi, and the wider HORUFADHI Media team on our social media platforms that should appear on the screen any moment. Let's get straight into it. Las Anod in the regions of Seoul, Sanag and Ain, or SSC, more popularly known, are home to the legendary dervish and anti-colonial warriors of Somalia. The flag of the self-declared Khatumo state of Somalia contains the very dervish warriors on his horse. For over a century now, it seems as though the people of the SSC region have been stuck in a cycle of continued struggle for their right to self-determine their future. From the British Empire to the current self-declared separatist Somaliland government in Hargeisa, the people in the region of SSC continue to face oppression. In recent weeks, Las Anod has been the center of Somali politics. But let's take a look back at the history of Las Anod and understand what the significance of this town is. So in recent decades, the last 2 decades for instance, the issue of political assassinations and a dispute between Somaliland and Puntland have been the main headlines coming out of the town of Las Anod. For instance, over 100 people have been assassinated in the town since 2009, with more than 99% of these cases remaining unsolved. In 2007, a war between neighbouring autonomous states within Somalia, Somaliland and Puntland, would see the town change hands for the final time, with the separatists in Hargeisa taking control. Nevertheless, historically, Las Anod played a leading role in the Somali national movement. In the latter decades of the 9th century, clans in the region of the SSC opposed the colonial treaties signed by neighbouring clans, which would ultimately form the British Somaliland Protectorate by the end of World War I, following the defeat of the great Sayyid Muhammad Abdullah Hassan in 1920. The town would also be the location of the infamous assassination of the then Somali president, Alawna Harit Abdurrashid Sharmake, which resulted in a coup that would see General Siad Barre become leader of the country in June 1969, a reign that would last until the collapse of the Somali government in 1991. Indeed, by 1991, groups in the northern regions such as the Somali National Movement, or SNM, would begin discussing the idea of separatism from the rest of the Somali nation. It would be May of that year that a separatist regime would be created with the intention of forming a new country separate from the Somali nation. However, the center issue to this was and currently remains consensus. While one of the main clans of the region supports the idea of separatism, this is not equally supported by many, not just in Seoul region, but also in the Aldo region, which is in the northwest of northern Somalia. The main question is, how has the idea of self-governance even evolved in Somalia? Because self-governance is the foundation of the eventual federalism that would form in 2000. See, by late 1991, many in Somalia began to realize that the security and stability provided by the central government for so many decades was all but gone, as the government collapsed in Mogadishu and the military completely disbanded. And this, of course, includes the police and every other government institution. Ultimately, many understood that the only way to protect their people in the region was to form autonomous states, for instance Puntland and Somaliland, to provide this sense of security and governance and avoid anarchy, as many feared that the chaos in the south would ultimately spread to the north. In other words, for some in Somaliland, not all, some, the idea of self-governance stemmed from the lack of security and government, a sense of fear and the need for stability to continue living their livelihoods. Many clan elders representing those people, those clans in the northern regions, had this at heart when they signed the peace accords that would eventually form Somaliland. This vehicle for peace would eventually be hijacked by the late 90s by an elite within the SNM movement that would ultimately form the idea of separatism. This group would claim the entirety of the former British protectorate in the region would be the basis for this new nation. Now, despite claims of stability, security and unity within the self-proclaimed region or state, Las Anod alongside the Sool region has been a major problem for Somaliland, and this very picture being painted by the separatists in Hargeisa. There have been reports of over 100 assassinations, as I mentioned, in the town of Las Anod since 2009, according to local statistics, with many murders remaining unaccounted for. And many of those killed are not just politicians, they're also civil leaders, clan leaders, religious leaders, anybody that is against the very idea of separatism. Now let's take a look at high-profile assassinations that have taken place since 2020 alone. In March 2020, the head of the courts in Sool, Hassan Sheikh, was killed by a bomb which was attached to his vehicle. Within the same month, the head of intelligence in Sool was killed while traveling home. In July 2021, the head of the Sool Electoral Commission was killed as he entered his home. The following month, local MP and chairman of the Wadani party in Sool, Abdul Rassaq Ilmi Ahmed, was killed as he entered his home in Las Anod. In March 2022, another local MP, Zakaria Garbayare, was survived an assassination attempt, sustaining injuries. Within the same month again, the chairman of the Sool Contractual Committee, Mohammed Abdullah Farah, was killed by unidentified gunmen in the center of Las Anod. In May 2022, former mayor of Las Anod, Abdulaziz Hussein, narrowly escaped an attempt on his life. And only a few weeks later, former local MP and chairman of U'id party in Sool, Muhammad Aflahar, was killed as he entered his home. The most recent, in December 2022, an official in the Sool Wadani party, Abdul Fattah Abdullah Hadrawi, was murdered in the town, which ultimately sparked the current unrest we see. The extensive list of murders and attempted murders remain unaccounted for, as the Somaliland authorities are yet to sentence anyone for these crimes. Indeed, there have been dozens more between 2010 and 2019. Let's take a look at 2010 alone, for instance, because we should look at the dates, and we should sporadically look at different dates. We saw 2020 and 2022, the amount of deaths that occurred. Let's take a 2010, for instance. Now, in January 16, 2010, Farah Abdi was killed. He was a senior member of Las Anod administrative officials, local government. That remains unsolved. In 26th of June 2010, Chief Hussein Dalqaf was killed, another unsolved case there. In July 8th, 2010, Salaban Dere, a respected elder that built multiple educational institutions, was also killed. This remains unsolved. These are just some of the killings. These are not all the killings of 2010. I'm just giving you some for time reasons, because I can continue listing names and it could take 20 minutes to list. Now, it's shocking. Now, the most recent event, which I spoke about, the Hadrawi killing, who was killed as he left a masjid in the town following an evening prayer on the 26th of December 2022, would spark this large unrest and protest that saw over 20 unarmed civilians killed by Somaliland separatist forces before local militia would eventually force these separatist soldiers out of the town a few weeks ago. Now, once the separatist Somaliland forces left, the protesters chanted their desire for a united Somalia, waving the Somali flag. This already sickened leaders in Hargeisa that considered the display of the Somali flag as an insult and considered it treasonous. Many people have been arrested across the Somaliland region for simply displaying a flag, for simply wearing a blue t-shirt, for simply having a star. These are serious, crimes against basic human rights and the ability to express one's opinion. Now, last week saw the beginning of the Las Anod summit, in which clan elders from the regions of Sool, Sanag and Ain met to discuss the future of their people. For decades, the people in the region have argued for the formation of Khatumo state as a federal member state of Somalia. So let's take a look at the history of Khatumo. Now, following the takeover of Las Anod by Somaliland in 2007, we saw a series of domestic and overseas conferences between prominent political figures, traditional elders, and local residents of the Sool, Sanag and Ain region. They agreed temporarily that the capital would be Taleh. It would be declared an autonomous region in 2012, being approved by the transitional government headed by Sharif Sheikh Ahmed in March of that year. Now, there were obviously many issues within the governance. At some point there was 3 presidents and different types of issues existed within this. And ultimately in August 2016, Khatumo state commenced what it called peace talks with the separatist Somaliland government. However, the talks caused a major disagreement between the president and the vice president of Khatumo at that time, Ali Khalif and Abdullah respectively, which eventually provided 2 separate administrations that both claimed to be the legitimate government. Now, the group led by Ali Khalif reached an agreement with the Somaliland separatist government at the town of Ainabo in October 2017. The group led by Ali Khalif reached an agreement with Somaliland in October 2017, which stipulated under the condition of changing the constitution of Somaliland, the organization would become integrated within the Somaliland government. President of Somaliland at that time, Siranyo and Ali Khalif, signed the Somaliland Khatumo agreement in October 2017. And the vice president of Khatumo State, Abdullah Mahmoud Ali, rejected the agreement and declared that himself the president of Khatumo State and announced that he supported Puntland's efforts to reclaim the Sol region. However, today it seems as though the people of the region have rejected both Somaliland and Puntland and want to decide the future of their nation, of their people, of their region by themselves. Years since this so-called peace agreement, there have been dozens of killings. They continue to go on and they continue to remain unsolved. Siranyo left, Bihi came, and these killings continue. The responsibility of security of Las Anod was on the Somaliland separatist government, and they failed to stop the killings. But not only did they fail to stop the killings, they also failed to investigate and even bring a single person on trial for any of these horrendous and horrific murders that continue in the town. Now, Khatumo State has been vehemently campaigning for recognition from the federal government of Somalia to become a federal member state in recent years, with equivalent status to Puntland and other federal member states. Recent conferences held in Mogadishu and Jigjiga have called for support and recognition. How the federal government has remained silent on the matter so far. Both Somaliland and Puntland, of course, do not logically want to see a region declared a federal member state and work together to ensure that this remains the case. Nevertheless, the regional states both claim jurisdiction over the region of Sool, Sanag and Ain, having fought numerous battles within the region in recent decades. However, it does seem as though Denny has changed his tune slightly. In his most recent speech regarding the issue, has said that he wants the people of the region to decide their fates rather than Getawe or Hargeisa doing so. Now, it seems as though there are only two avenues forward for the people of Khatumo to have this recognized federal member state. One is Mogadishu recognize Khatumo. This is currently the least likely outcome, despite rumors currently circulating, because Villa Somalia has not spoken about the issue of Khatumo state and self-determination in the Sool, Sanag and Ain regions thus far. And the second option would be self-determination by any means necessary, which is currently ongoing because the people of Sool, Sanag and Ain have sat down together, irrespective of Mogadishu, Getawe, Hargeisa, or any other region thinks. They want to decide their future, and ultimately, the fate of Sool, Sanag and Ain continues to be blocked by hurdles set by fellow Somalis. The future of Sool, Sanag and Ain now solely lies in the hands of the people of the region. Indeed, reports emerging in recent days indicate that both the President and Prime Minister of Somalia are willing to acknowledge whatever outcome is decided by the region. Now, the President and Prime Minister both met with a delegation of MPs and senators that are from this region, and it seems as though this could be a possible outcome. However, this officially, of course, has not been declared. Indeed, the arrival of Sultan of the Dulbahante clan, Garad Jama, for the first time in 15 years after the summit that kicked off last week, is a major sign that the people of the region are free to do as they wish, because the Sultan or the Grad in the Somali language was expelled from the region by the separatist authorities due to his opposition of separatism. Now, speaking in front of dozens of Ras Anod residents while holding the Awala flag, the flag of the Somali nation and the Somali people, he declared that there will be no separation of the Somali nation. And in a televised speech yesterday, Monday, separatist Somaliland president declared that his forces would not leave the region and insisted that they will defend the region at whatever cost. In a threatening statement, the president blamed the chaos in Ras Anod on an unnamed terrorist group and urged the people of Sool to work for peace, emphasizing that Somaliland army is protecting its country from the enemies, as he put it. In other words, accusing clan elders of the Dulbahante clan and the region as a whole of being terrorists. On the other hand, the Sultan of the Dulbahante clan, Garad Jama, described the speech of Musa Bihi as regrettable, at the minimum, saying that the president's speech is only fueling the already existing issue and tensions in the region between two groups with two different ideologies. Continuing on, the Garad said that the only terrorists in the region, and this is in response to Musa Bihi, the president of Somaliland, are the Somaliland forces that are not from the region that continue to stay, despite pleas by elders in the region to withdraw while talks continue to resolve the impasse. We are asking for separatist forces to withdraw from the region while we continue our peaceful summit to find a peaceful resolution to the current impasse. We shall let the world and Somali people decide who is right and who is wrong, said the Sultan. Indeed, Somaliland forces killed dozens of unarmed civilians in recent weeks due to the protests, which are the basic human rights. The massacre at Las Anod is not the first sign that human rights in Somaliland are under threat, while the region is mercifully free from the scourge of al-Shabaab terrorism. Its leaders have a selective attitude to civil liberties. Reporters Without Borders criticized Somaliland authorities for banning the BBC Somali language service. And Amnesty International has said authorities in Somaliland severely restricted freedom of expression, particularly targeting individuals perceived to be promoting unity with Somalia. Mohammed Abib, an MP from the Awdal region in Somaliland, spoke out last month for the growing number of assassinations, which have often happened around Las Anod, but also have happened in the town of Burma in the years previous. In 2021, over 7,000 people from the Rahawain clan, a major clan in the south of southwest state Somalia, were evicted from the city and surrounding areas for allegedly posing a security risk surrounding the assassinations. Now, many analysts, Somali analysts, have argued that this was a blatant clan discrimination act. They were forcibly transferred to the neighboring federal state of Puntland. Now, ultimately, the possibility of war increases between two disagreeing parties. The issue of Las Anod is centered to the separatist cause. The formation of Khatumo state and the secession of Sol from the Somaliland government would ultimately destroy the very image being portrayed by the separatist regime in Hargeisa of unity and peaceful governance. Because this image is important to sell to other nations and politicians about this idea of Somaliland being a separate country and the people being united to leave Somalia. The fact that Las Anod has become the situation it is a clear indication for the globe that this claim is false. And it's difficult to see Somaliland simply, sitting aside and watching this go on, because it's damaging 30 years of work that they've put in to try and get recognition from the globe. And ultimately, it's hard to see separatists in Hargeisa recognizing the self-determination of the Sol, Sanag and Ain region, despite their own claim of self-determination. This is the biggest contradiction being shown by Hargeisa, because the people in Hargeisa, or the separatist government in Hargeisa at least, are advocating for self-determination, the right to determine their own future. Yet they deny the people of Las Anod the very right that they're seeking. And many people are questioning, is this right that Somaliland's arguing for justified? Additionally, the recognition of Khatumo state as a federal member state by Mogadishu could also hinder possible talks between Hargeisa and Mogadishu. But it could also strengthen the argument for Somali unity, because it will, again, as I've said, poke holes in the argument that Somaliland is one unified region that all agree to separate from Somalia. Ultimately, conflict is not the answer, and many people, including myself, are waiting for the outcome of this summit.